Welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into a different kind of nightmare. Not a jumble of jump scares and theories, but a single, quiet timeline following one man's life as it bends and breaks and refuses to end. Here, we take our time. This channel is built for the quiet hours, for long-form atmospheric journeys through 5 nights at Freddy's history, told as if they were bedtime stories about haunted shadows and broken promises. You can listen while you study, while you rest, or as you fall asleep, letting the steady rhythm of the narration carry you through decades of Fazbear Entertainment's rise and decay. There will be no sudden loud moments, no sharp cuts, only a calm, unbroken line of events, described slowly and carefully until the pieces begin to fit. Tonight, that line belongs to William Afton. We will follow him from the early days, when he was simply a gifted engineer and business partner, standing beside Emily at Fredbear's family diner, dreaming of cheerful restaurants and mechanical mascots that could walk and sing for innocent children. From the first experiments with dangerous Springlock suits that could shift between costume and animatronic, to the polished stages of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, we will watch how a man who built wonders for families also opened the door to tragedy. Across this episode, we'll trace his whole path, step by step, from the first missing children lured into quiet back rooms, to the moment his own creations turned on him and crushed him inside the Spring Bonnie suit, binding him into the decayed figure we know as Springtrap. We'll follow his legacy beyond that locked room, through fires that should have ended him, through the restless spirits that refused to let him go, and into the digital projects that tried to resurrect Fazbear's image with bright VR headsets and harmless training games. Somewhere in that code, his presence stirs again, as Glitchtrap, half human, half program, a monster that learned how not to die. To keep things clear, we'll keep the broader FNAF saga simple. At the surface, it is a story of family pizzerias filled with songs and birthday parties, of animatronic bears and rabbits entertaining crowds under colored lights. Beneath that surface, it is a history of experimental machines, of quiet tragedies and disappearances, of security puppets and possessed suits, and of one man whose choices echo through every location, every haunting, every corrupted line of code. This is not a theory dump or a frantic recap. It is a calm, continuous story meant to be heard in the dark, eyes closed, as you let the tale wash over you. We will move carefully from the first golden mascots at Fredbear's family diner, through the classic Freddy Fazbear's locations, into underground facilities, burning pizzerias, and finally the virtual realms where William's influence refuses to fade. By the end, you will have walked his entire tangled web of decisions and consequences, from engineer to monster, from man of flesh and blood to something far stranger. So settle in, breathe slowly. When you're ready, we'll return to the very beginning, where a small diner, 2 partners, and a pair of Springlock suits set everything in motion. A shared night. You, this story, Fright, and the world outside. Before we step fully into that beginning, into the quiet clatter of dishes and the soft whir of early animatronics, let's pause together for a moment in the present. You, wherever you are. Us, here, tracing this long, haunted history. The world outside, still moving, even as we are drifting slowly through a darker timeline. If you find some comfort in this slow, atmospheric way of telling the story, in letting the tangled web of events unfold at a gentle pace instead of rushing from jump scare to jump scare, you are welcome to stay with us for as long as you like. And if you feel that this is a place you might want to return to in other quiet hours, you can choose to like this video or subscribe, only if it feels right. Only if this calm retelling gives you a small island of stillness in the noise. And there is something quietly strange about knowing that this same story is playing out in many different rooms and cities at once. Somewhere, someone is lying in bed, lights off, phone on the pillow, listening as William Afton takes his first steps toward tragedy. Somewhere else, a screen glows over a cluttered desk while someone studies, the words becoming a soft backdrop. On a late-night train, in a car parked under streetlights, in a dorm where a roommate has already fallen asleep, the same haunted shadows move through headphones and speakers. If you feel like leaving a trace of your place in this shared moment, you can write a small comment with the time, or the city, or simply what you're doing right now. 2:17 a.m., trying to sleep. On a bus, watching the rain. Studying, but listening to the restless spirits of Fazbear's history. Just a few words, nothing more. And suddenly we can see how scattered we are across the world, yet still connected by a single, quiet story. And if you drift off while listening, that is more than all right. In fact, that is the point. You do not have to catch every line, or remember every date, or hold every name in your mind. Let the tale wash over you, like distant conversation in another room. The video will still be here when you wake, waiting patiently, step by step, for you to return to whatever part of William's legacy you last remember. Here is a small pattern interrupt, a gentle one. You might think this is only a horror story, but it is also a story about families, about innocent dreams turning to quiet tragedies, about how one man's choices echo through decades of technology and memory. So breathe in once more. Feel the room around you. Let the meta-talk fade, like a hallway receding behind us, doors closing softly. Ahead, the lights of a small diner are turning on for the first time. Two partners are shaking hands, and our timeline at last begins. In the haze of the 70s, the first footsteps. Let's begin. In the quiet haze of the 1970s, before the headlines and the haunted shadows, America's family entertainment was still learning what it wanted to be. The colors were muted, like old film stock. Carpets in washed-out reds and browns, walls in tired yellows, neon signs humming softly over near-empty parking lots. Inside, you could hear the gentle clatter of pinball machines and the distant chime of quarter-fed arcade cabinets just beginning to appear, and the low murmur of parents trying to give their children a simple, innocent night out. This is where our timeline truly opens, drifting slowly into a world that doesn't yet know the name Fazbear. In small towns and suburbs, pizza parlors are experimenting with themes, with mascots, with anything that might keep families lingering a little longer under the fluorescent glow. Someone dresses in a threadbare bear costume to wave at kids. A jukebox plays the same worn songs. The dream is modest but clear: food, fun, and a memory worth coming back for. Step by step, a new kind of business model is taking shape. One that sees children not just as guests, but as the center of an entire experience. And somewhere in that grainy decade, we find a young William Afton, not yet a legend, not yet a monster, just a man of tools and blueprints. He is most at ease with a screwdriver in his hand, with wires laid out in patient rows, with gears and servos that respond exactly as they are told. People are messy, unpredictable. Machines are quiet, obedient. almost comforting. While others see a noisy dining room, William sees systems to be optimized, mechanisms to be improved, and opportunities hidden in every whirring motor. At the same time, another current is moving through the culture. Theme parks are proving that animatronic figures can sing, dance, and hold an audience in a way a simple costume never could. The idea of a mechanical host, a smiling character who never grows tired and never breaks character, feels like the future. To the right mind, it looks like a doorway. To someone like William, and it is an invitation. Animatronic mascots, themed dining, carefully choreographed shows, all of it is converging into a single, lucrative vision that will soon need engineers, visionaries, and risk-takers. In that quiet convergence, we can already sense the outline of a partnership waiting to happen, a meeting with a man named Henry Emily, who will share the dream, if not the darkness. Because even now, beneath William's talent and his calm exterior, something else is forming, as patient as a shadow in the corner of a workshop, an obsession with control, a curiosity about what lies past the simple joy of a moving mascot. In these quiet hours of design and tinkering, the legacy of future quiet tragedies is already taking root. For the moment, though, all anyone can see is potential. A small diner, a new company, and two men about to shake hands beneath a flickering sign. But when that sign finally lights up, and the first animatronic bear turns its head to greet a child, what exactly will be waking up with it? Two minds, one dream. William Afton meets Henry Emily. So when that first animatronic head finally turns, it does not wake up alone. Behind the painted smile and the careful servos, two very different minds are quietly sharing the same dream, standing in the same fluorescent glow, imagining the same cheering families. For now. Henry Emily arrives in this timeline like a gentle counterweight to William. Where William sees circuits and tolerances, Henry sees faces and feelings. He sketches rounded cheeks, soft eyes, and friendly postures, trying to capture the way a child might hug a mascot without fear. In his notebooks, the bears and rabbits are companions, stage partners, innocent guardians of birthday cakes and arcade tokens, and he talks about them the way an artist talks about old friends. For Henry, these machines are not just products, but a promise that a lonely child can walk into a noisy diner and feel seen. William, standing beside him at the drafting table, is the one who makes that promise move. He measures hinge points, calculates weight distributions, and chooses alloys with a meticulous patience that borders on obsession. Where Henry's pencil lines drift across the page, William's ruler snaps them into place. Where Henry dreams in color, William answers in metal and plastic, in gear ratios and motor torque. He can take a rough sketch of a singing bear and step by step, turn it into a working endoskeleton that blinks, bows, and waves on command. In those early, quiet hours of collaboration, it feels as though they have found the perfect balance. Together, they begin to shape Fredbear's family diner out of almost nothing. A rented storefront, a handful of tables, a stage just high enough for children to stare up in wonder. Henry refines Fredbear's friendly grin, tests fabric swatches against the warm yellow of the fur, and lingers on details that make the character feel approachable. William wires the jaw so it can sync to pre-recorded songs, threads cables through the spine, and experiments with shared springlock mechanisms that could let a performer climb inside the same frame. The dream grows slowly but steadily, a family restaurant where music, mascots, and mechanical marvels blend into one seamless show. But even here, drifting slowly through these hopeful beginnings, we can feel a faint divide. Henry insists on safety checks, on emergency releases, on warning labels no child will ever read, but every parent might quietly appreciate. He worries about pinched fingers, exposed bolts, the possibility of a frightened guest getting too close to moving parts. William, meanwhile, is drawn to the edge of what the technology can do, shaving off precautions where they slow down the spectacle, cutting corners if it means one more feature, one more trick, one more way to impress investors and families alike. To him, the Springlocks are elegant, efficient, a clever solution to a crowded back room. These are small disagreements at first, passing shadows across the workbench rather than open conflict. Henry talks about joy, about giving children good memories. William talks about potential, about scale, about how many locations they might open if they move quickly. One man is guarding the experience, the other is chasing expansion. And as their partnership deepens, this gentle friction becomes part of the machinery itself, a hidden gear turning beneath the polished stage. In the moment, all anyone outside can see is success, a laughing crowd, a dancing bear, a company with a future. Yet in the haunted shadows behind the curtain, the stage is being set for something darker. The same systems that let a man disappear inside a smiling suit, the same habit of overlooking small risks in favor of bigger dreams, will one day give William Afton room to indulge impulses Henry cannot imagine. For now, the restless spirits of this place are still only theoretical. But the tangled web that will catch them is already being woven, strand by careful strand, in the shared blueprints of two men who believe they are building nothing more than a happy little diner. Fredbear's family. Diner, the first stage lights. And so, from those shared blueprints and modest dreams, the first real stage of their legacy takes shape. We step together through the front door of Fredbear's family diner, drifting slowly into a smaller, quieter world than the sprawling chains that will come later, a place where the history of this entire timeline still smells faintly of fresh paint, pizza dough, and cheap party balloons. The diner is cozy, almost shy. Checkered floors spread out in simple black and white, not yet worn by decades of footsteps, just gently scuffed by a few regular families. Vinyl booths line the walls, and their colors a little faded even when new, like a dream of the 1950s hanging on into the 1970s. Paper plates, plastic cups, a few crepe streamers that sag as the night goes on. Everything is modest, familiar, and comfortingly small, while in the center of it all, a low wooden stage waits beneath a row of soft yellowed lights. On that stage stand the first mascots of this haunted history, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. At a glance, they are just friendly animal performers, a golden bear with a microphone and a lanky rabbit with a bow tie, ready to sing birthday songs to innocent children. But underneath the fur and foam are metal frames, servos, and a dangerous compromise. These are Springlock suits, built to be both animatronic robots and wearable costumes, and able to shift from automated entertainers to human-operated characters with the careful crank of internal mechanisms that hold steel and wires away from flesh. Henry gives them names, personalities, and a gentle story to live in. He sketches logos, chooses the warm purple and gold, and imagines families returning week after week to see their favorite bear and rabbit. While he refines the branding and the comforting atmosphere, William is in the back room with a different focus, leaning over endoskeletons, testing servos, and perfecting the delicate springlock systems that let these creations stand on the thin line between machine and suit. Henry sells the dream. William makes it move. For William, each smooth step Fredbear takes and each synchronized jaw movement from Spring Bonnie is a quiet triumph. The children laugh, they clap, and they dance in front of the stage, and every delighted reaction reflects back on him like a mirror that only shows the best parts. The external success begins to feed an internal ego, telling him that he is not just an engineer, but a kind of unseen puppeteer, a man who can turn cold metal into something that passes for life. And then, after closing, the mood changes. The lights dim, the booths are empty, and the restless spirits that will one day crowd these rooms are still only distant possibilities, waiting in the haunted shadows of the future. In these quiet hours, William stays behind, alone with the machines. He listens to the soft clicks of cooling servos, the faint whir of motors winding down, as if the suits are whispering secrets meant only for him, step by step drawing him into a private conversation that no one else can quite hear. It is here, in that intimate silence between man and machine, that the tangled web tightens almost imperceptibly, and the line between pride and obsession begins to blur, setting the stage for the first real tragedy to follow. Springlocks and shortcuts, the dangerous beauty of dual-use suits. So when William stands alone with the suits, listening to that quiet purr of motors, the next idea that takes root feels almost inevitable, drifting slowly out of that intimate silence between man and machine. If an animatronic can move like a performer, he wonders, why can't a performer become the animatronic, sharing the same shell, the same smiling face, the same carefully rehearsed routine? It is a simple thought on the surface, but beneath it, the metal begins to shift. From that question comes the Springlock suit, a dangerous kind of beauty hidden inside soft fabric and painted fur. In its normal state, the suit is an ordinary animatronic, full of steel ribs, jointed limbs, and an endoskeleton spine. But along those bones run rows of tension springs, latches, and tiny crank-driven cams. When a worker needs to climb inside, they wind the mechanisms back, pulling the metal framework into recesses and locking it there, clearing a narrow, human-shaped corridor through the machine so that flesh can stand where gears once turned. For a business still counting every dollar, this dual-use design is like a dream. One body can be a mascot on stage in the quiet hours of the morning, then a costumed employee during the busy afternoon rush, and then an automated performer again when staff goes home and the restaurant hums on pre-programmed shows. Fewer suits to build, fewer paychecks to sign, more flexibility in every location along the growing timeline of Fazbear's expansion. On paper, it is elegant, efficient, almost visionary. But inside that elegance, the risks are waiting in the shadows. The springs that hold the endoskeleton back are always straining, always eager to return to their resting place, and the locks that restrain them are sensitive to moisture, to sudden jolts, to the tiniest misalignment of a worn-down part. A bead of sweat dripping from a frightened employee's brow, a panicked flinch during a crowded birthday song, a poorly cleaned mechanism after a long shift, and the springlocks can let go, snapping the metal spine and limbs forward with crushing, at lethal force. Henry sees this clearly, almost immediately. He drafts strict safety protocols, diagrams pinned to break room walls, training sessions where he repeats calmly but firmly, the rules about hand cranks, ceiling bolts, and staying away from damp rooms and rowdy crowds. He wants the Springlock suits used rarely, inspected constantly, retired the moment they show their age. William, standing beside him in those meetings, nods along, but his eyes are already on the balance sheets. Where Henry sees potential for quiet tragedies, William sees a wasted potential, and he begins to argue that the dangers are manageable, that accidents are unlikely, that progress always asks for a little risk. In his mind, a few extra checks, a reminder here and there, and the problem is solved, while the savings remain, while the innovation continues, as step by step, he learns to live with the idea that other people's safety can be measured against his own ambition. And once that calculation feels normal, it becomes much easier to apply it elsewhere, in darker ways, when the haunted shadows of the pizzeria start to fill with restless spirits and the first innocent lives hang in the balance, just waiting for one spring to finally snap. A father in the workshop, William Afton's hidden home life. And while that calculation hardens inside him, life at home tells a quieter story, one that drifts slowly beneath the surface of the headlines and the company memos. Away from the pizzeria lights and the clatter of dishes, William Afton is not just an engineer or an owner. He is a father moving through a small, eye-shadowed house that never quite feels as bright as the restaurants he helps design. We meet his children there, not as theories on a message board, but as small, breathing pieces of his legacy. There is Michael, the oldest, hovering on the edge of adolescence, trying to impress a man who rarely looks up from his notes. There is the younger son, the boy we so often remember as the crying child, drawn to Fredbears and Freddys with equal parts wonder and dread. And there is Elizabeth, bright and inquisitive, her questions about the characters and the machines spilling out faster than William's quiet answers can keep up. In public, his creations dance and sing for other people's children, their painted smiles wide, their movements smooth and rehearsed. At home, his own smiles are smaller and slower, arriving late, like an afterthought, while his mind returns to schematics and performance schedules. The mascots are designed to be endlessly cheerful, endlessly patient, endlessly present, while William himself is often a cold, distracted figure at the dinner table, promising he will be more attentive after the next big test, after the next location opens, after the next safety concern is addressed. Still, there are moments where we can see the father he might have been. In the workshop, during the quiet hours when the restaurant is closed, he sometimes lets Michael stay up past bedtime, placing a small wrench in his hand and guiding him through the careful tightening of a joint. He walks his children through the darkened dining room after hours, unlocking a side door with a conspiratorial nod, telling them they are seeing something no other kids get to see, and the animatronics stand motionless, like gentle giants sleeping, and for a fleeting second it feels like a dream, a secret world shared between a father and his children. But those moments are fragile. The pattern breaks. We hear the muffled rise of voices behind a closed bedroom door, arguments with a spouse over missed recitals, over long nights spent at the workshop, over the way his attention clings to metal and circuitry, while his living family waits in the shadows. We notice how often he leaves before breakfast, how often the children fall asleep on the couch, still in their day clothes, waiting for him to come home. Step by step, the machines begin to receive more of him than his children ever do. He knows every servo, every wire path, every line of code, while he misses the small, restless shifts in his younger son's fear on awe the way Elizabeth's curiosity edges into obsession. These are quiet tragedies, unfolding in the background of a larger timeline, yet they shape everything that follows, because the same creativity that could have made him a beloved father, the same imagination that builds innocent dreams into singing bears and friendly rabbits, will soon twist into the mechanism of his children's deepest traumas, and the haunted shadows of his workshop will become the stage where that transformation finally, irrevocably, takes place. From diner to franchise, the birth of Fazbear Entertainment, and from those haunted shadows of his workshop, the world outside begins to take notice. Fredbear's family. Diner does not explode into fame overnight. It grows quietly, slowly, through birthday party stories and faded Polaroids, and through local commercials with grainy film and cheerful jingles that linger in the mind long after the television clicks off. Parents talk. Kids beg to go back. Investors, always listening for the next profitable dream, hear about a place where singing bears and rabbits make children forget the weight of the real world for an afternoon. In that gentle word of mouth, in those quiet tragedies of ordinary families looking for a safe, happy place, an opportunity appears. A small diner becomes a proof of concept, and men in suits, not costumes, begin to visit, asking about expansion, about franchising, about how this little stage might become a chain that stretches across cities and states. Out of those meetings, out of contracts and signatures and late-night conversations, a new name is born. Fazbear Entertainment, and a corporate shell wrapped around a simple, smiling bear. Henry steps forward as the face of this growing legacy, the one who can talk to cameras and reassure parents, the creative director who sketches new characters and stages, who dreams of a wholesome, family-friendly history unfolding step by step. William, by contrast, moves behind the curtain, the quiet architect of endoskeletons and servos, the one who understands how to make metal move like it is alive, how to turn a design on paper into a towering mascot that can hug an excited child without crushing them. Commercials begin to run in brighter markets now, no longer just local cable. We can almost see them, drifting slowly across late-night programming, Freddy waving, Bonnie strumming a guitar, Chica offering a slice of pizza, Foxy peeking from behind a curtain, and new locations open with ribbon cuttings and balloons, each one a mirror of the last, yet slightly different. Each one adding another character, another theme, another room where memories will be made and later remembered only as fragments in a dream. But with each grand opening, the pressure grows. Investors want more profit, more novelty, more reasons for families to choose Freddy's over any other birthday spot. Henry's gentle pace of careful design is nudged, then pushed, by executives and deadlines, while William is quietly encouraged to do what he already does best: innovate, experiment, move faster. Animatronics become more complex, more experimental, their mechanisms more temperamental, as he pushes the limits of what can be built in the quiet hours between closing and dawn. And with every new restaurant added to the Fazbear timeline, the floor plans stretch and tangle. More storage rooms, more maintenance closets, more off-limits back halls where the lights are dim and the cameras do not always reach. The cheerful front of house grows brighter, while behind it, a tangled web of corridors and workshops spreads, creating more places where someone like William can move unseen, more corners where restless spirits will one day gather, waiting for the moment when the fun stops and the true tragedy begins. Behind the mascot head, the first dark impulses. And in those narrow back halls, where the air smells faintly of grease and dust instead of pizza and soda. William learns something important. He learns the rhythm of these places. The way the dining room swells with noise at birthday song peaks, and then dips into manageable chatter, then thins out into those quiet hours when only a few lingering families remain, drifting slowly between arcade cabinets and the prize counter. He studies it like an engineer studies a circuit. Opening shifts, when parents are alert and cameras are checked. Lunchtime rushes, when staff are distracted with orders and spilled drinks. Late afternoons, when the music loops have become background noise and the adults are talking to each other more than watching the children. Step by step, he maps every hallway, every maintenance corridor, every camera angle that leaves a blind spot in the shadows just off screen. We can imagine him walking those paths with a clipboard at first, counting outlets and checking fuses, his presence completely ordinary. Over time, the motions become second nature and almost meditative. He knows which doors stick, which lights flicker, which security monitors are habitually ignored. The front of house is bright and predictable, but behind it, he cultivates a private familiarity with silence, with the sound of his own footsteps, with the way the building seems to hold its breath between songs. Somewhere along this timeline, an idea takes root. The company already relies on mascot performers to greet children, to pose for photos, to make the characters feel real. William helped design the suits. He knows the mechanisms, the weight, the way the heads restrict vision, the way the padding muffles sound. He also knows something else. Children trust these characters more easily than they trust any stranger in plain clothes. So the image begins. A friendly mascot, perhaps Spring Bonnie, and appearing not just on the main floor, but in doorways and side halls, offering private attention, a secret tour, a chance to see where the magic is made. It feels, on the surface, like an extension of the show, a bonus moment in a birthday dream, but it bends that trust ever so gently, away from the safety of the dining room and toward the back. The widely accepted story of the first missing children incident grows from this soil. A man in a costume, luring a small group away from the noise and lights, down a familiar corridor, into a back room that smells of metal and cleaner. The party continues outside. The music loops. Inside, the sound is different. It is mostly the hum of equipment and the distant muffled laughter of the innocent who remain. We do not need to linger on what happens next. The police reports, in universe, speak in careful clinical language. Missing persons, interviews, searches of the premises. Rumors ripple through the community, parents trading half-heard details in parking lots, while children still beg to come back and play. Officially, nothing is proven. No bodies are found. The case grows cold. Yet something in the pizzerias changes. There is a new weight in the air, a subtle tension beneath the jingles, as if haunted shadows have begun to gather just out of sight. Parents watch the doors a little more closely. Staff glance toward those back rooms with a quiet unease. The building is the same on paper, the same layout, the same shows and prizes, but its legacy has shifted, and the first of many quiet tragedies has quietly taken root, waiting for restless spirits to answer what has been done to them. So haunted metal, the birth of vengeful spirits, and in that unsettled air, in those hallways that feel just a little too long after closing, something begins to change. The building is quiet, the lights are dim, but the story of what has happened here does not simply end with police reports and missing posters. It lingers, drifting slowly, clinging to the walls and the stage, and most of all, to the metal smiles waiting in the dark. In the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, the tragedy is not only that innocent children are taken, but that their souls do not move on. In the moment of fear and confusion, when life is torn away in some lonely back room, they reach for the nearest things that can still move, still stand, still turn their heads toward a door. The animatronics, with their open endoskeletons and hollow suits, become accidental vessels, a last resort for restless spirits who refuse to let their story end in silence. We see this not through a single cutscene, but through quiet tragedies retold as simple, almost primitive minigames. In Take Cake to the Children, a small blocky Freddy carries slices to unhappy kids outside a lonely building, while, in the margins, a purple car pulls up and a figure approaches a crying child. The game cannot show us the full horror, so it shows us cake and pixel tears instead, a symbolic echo of a life stolen just beyond the frame. Then, in Give Gifts, Give Life, the perspective shifts. A golden figure moves gently from body to body, placing masks on still forms, transforming a row of victims into the familiar faces of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. The gifts are not toys or tickets, but new homes, new shells. The masks become doorways, and through those doorways, the children step into metal bodies that should never have held a heartbeat. At first, the staff do not have the language for what they are seeing. An animatronic that was locked facing the stage is found in the morning, angled just a few degrees toward the office door. A microphone lies on the floor, even though no one stayed late to rehearse. In the quiet hours after closing, there are soft, dragging footsteps in the dining room, the faint whir of servos where no power should be running, and the unnerving sense that empty plastic eyes are following every movement. This is the moment when William Afton's crimes stop belonging only to police files and human courts. The violence he has committed begins to echo outward into something older, stranger, and far less forgiving, weaving itself into the tangled web of Fazbear's haunted history. Whether he understands it yet or not, the characters he engineered for birthdays and songs have become something else. Judges, witnesses, and in time, jailers, hiding behind painted smiles. Step by step, the pizzeria turns into a courtroom no one can see, and the animatronics become the jury that never sleeps. And as their presence grows stronger, as their movements grow bolder, one question hangs quietly in the shadows. What happens when the ones he created finally turn to face him? The Bite of 83, a family shattered on stage. And then, one afternoon, that silent jury watches a different kind of trial unfold, not in a back room, but out on the bright, noisy stage. It is a birthday party at Fredbear's, and balloons sway gently above plastic tables. The air is thick with cake frosting and tinny music, and children's laughter rises and falls like waves against the walls. We see Michael Afton there, the older brother, trying to act tough and distant, while his younger brother, the boy fans will remember as the crying child, clings to the edges of the room, uneasy in the animatronic's looming shadows. Their relationship is strained in that ordinary, painful way siblings can be, where affection hides beneath teasing, and teasing drifts slowly into cruelty. Michael and his friends notice the way the younger boy trembles whenever Fredbear's giant head turns, whenever those mechanical jaws open in a slow, rehearsed song. The prank begins as a joke, a way to prove that the monsters on stage are harmless, that this fear is childish and embarrassing. No one in that room yet understands how thin the line is between pretend danger and real tragedy. in a blur of peer pressure and nervous laughter, the crying child is lifted, carried, pushed closer to the golden bear than he has ever been before. It is not described in blood or gore here, but in proximity. A small, frightened face pressed too near metal teeth. A body held aloft where it cannot easily escape. A machine whose design assumes perfect conditions in a world that is anything but perfect. The prankers intend to scare him, to make him cry, maybe to get a reaction they can remember later. Instead, the mechanisms fail. Springs that should have stayed locked shift under unexpected pressure. Servos react to movement they were never tested for, and in one terrible instant, Fredbear's jaws close at the wrong time, in the wrong place. The bite of 83 is not just a single chomp. It is a horrible convergence of faulty engineering, childish cruelty, and a father's negligence in understanding the true risks of his own creations. A design meant to entertain becomes a weapon, because no one, least of all William, truly respected how fragile and innocent life is beside experimental machinery. The party dissolves into screams, then sirens, then quiet. We move to hospital corridors washed in pale light, to a room where monitors flicker softly and machines breathe for a small, broken boy. In those quiet hours, William stands between two worlds. On one side, his comatose son, motionless except for the gentle rise and fall of his chest. On the other, the memory of the animatronics he built, the Springlock systems he signed off on, the safety checks he rushed or ignored. He visits, he watches, he murmurs reassurances that sound more like excuses than comfort. He cannot fully accept blame, or perhaps he dares not. If this is his fault, then his entire legacy is a monument to negligence. So he does what engineers do. He starts to think, not of grief counseling or letting go, but of mechanisms, of thresholds, of the boundary between life and death. If a machine can break a body, could a machine also hold a soul? Could technology rewrite an ending? Michael, meanwhile, carries a different weight. The prank that went too far becomes the quiet center of his life, a memory that will follow him from location to location, from night shift to night shift, as he walks among restless spirits in haunted suits, trying to make amends. The bite of 83 becomes the first fracture in the Afton family's history, a wound that never truly heals. And for William, this is the moment his obsession deepens, as if he believes he can engineer a way to undo what has been done, to outwit death itself. Step by step, his thoughts turn from safety to control, from prevention to resurrection, and the tangled web of his experiments begins to spread beneath every cheerful stage Fazbear will ever build. Masks and lawsuits, the public face of a failing dream. But while William's thoughts sink deeper into those haunted shadows of control and resurrection, the surface of Fazbear Entertainment tries to remain smooth, polished, almost reassuring. The company cannot afford to dream openly about conquering death, so it does something quieter and more familiar instead. It manages the story. In the official statements after the bite of 83, the language is careful and strangely gentle. It is an unfortunate malfunction, a freak accident, a rare failure in an otherwise safe family environment. Press releases talk about a beloved location, about community support, about their commitment to safety moving forward. And as we're drifting slowly through this timeline, we can almost hear the press conferences, measured voices, practiced apologies, promises that this will never happen again. When children begin to go missing around the Freddy's locations, the pattern repeats. The word tragedy appears often. but the word murder almost never does. Incidents are framed as misunderstandings, as ongoing investigations, as matters for law enforcement rather than the company itself. Parents receive condolences and carefully worded settlements. Our local papers run short articles that fade from the front page with quiet efficiency, while Fazbear's lawyers make sure every signature is in place, every liability minimized, every loose end tied just tightly enough to hold. Inside the employee manuals, the response takes on a different shape. New safety policies arrive, written in calm, bureaucratic language. Do not leave children unattended near animatronics. Report any unusual behavior immediately. Follow all Springlock maintenance procedures exactly as described. Warning signs appear on backroom doors, on control panels, on the aging Springlock suits that William once saw as elegant engineering solutions. There are costume rules now, access logs, checklists to initial at the beginning and end of each shift, as if ink on a page could hold back restless spirits. And Henry accepts these measures as necessary, even if they come too late, and his caution grows heavier with each quiet tragedy. William, though, feels something else tightening around him. Every new rule feels like a chain. Every safety memo feels like an accusation. Where Henry sees responsibility, William sees interference, an attempt to fence in his genius, to slow the progress of his experiments. Step by step, he stops viewing rules as protections and starts seeing them as obstacles to be bypassed, loopholes to be exploited, blind spots to be used. And with every lawsuit settled, with every incident quietly reclassified and filed away, William learns a darker lesson. Terrible things can happen, and as long as the paperwork is correct, the world will move on. And the pizzerias become layered spaces now. Bright stages and innocent music above. A sediment of secrets and lies pressed down beneath. In the quiet hours after closing, when the lights dim and the carpets stop echoing with children's footsteps, that layered history begins to feel almost physical, as if the buildings themselves are slowly absorbing everything no one will say out loud. The bite of 87, another jaw, another scar. And as those buildings absorb their secrets, the company keeps moving forward, as if fresh paint and new carpeting could cover the sediment of lies. We drift with it, drifting slowly along the timeline, from the older, worn-down locations into a newer Fazbear space, brighter and sleeker on the surface, yet carrying the same faint, haunted smell of grease, metal, and recycled dreams. The posters change, and the mascots get updated, but the promise is familiar. Family fun, affordable birthdays, animatronic friends that never get tired. Here, the characters are more advanced, with smoother endoskeletons, wider ranges of motion, and faces that can track and follow in ways the early models never could. There are more colors in the dining room, more plastic and polished flooring, a slightly more modern aesthetic that tells parents this is progress, this is safety, this is the future of children's entertainment. Underneath that marketing gloss, though, the same engineering lineage runs through every joint and servo. A quiet legacy of William Afton's design philosophy, carried forward even when his name is no longer spoken aloud in boardrooms. In this place, during regular daytime hours, an event will occur that fans will whisper about for years. The bite of 87. No dimly lit backroom this time, no lonely child at closing, but a guard on duty, an adult meant to watch over the floor, suddenly finding themselves on the wrong side of an animatronic's jaw. The details are fragmented, deliberately obscured by legal language and company statements, yet the outline is clear enough for our purposes. An animatronic lashes out, clamps down on the guard's head, and in an instant, the cheerful illusion tears open, leaving severe head trauma and a crowd of witnesses. We do not linger on gore here. We linger on pattern. Once again, it is the mouth, the teeth, the crushing bite. Once again, a mechanism designed for smiling, for singing, for entertaining, becomes the instrument of a quiet tragedy that ripples through families and headlines. Once again, safety protocols fail, or are ignored, or are not quite enough to contain the restless potential of these machines. Step by step, the timeline keeps circling back to Jaws and damage, to the haunted shadows of earlier incidents that never fully healed. In the aftermath, Fazbear Entertainment responds in the way corporations do when their dream turns visibly dangerous. There are new rules about animatronic movement, stricter limits on where and when they can roam freely, and closer oversight from regional managers who speak in careful, rehearsed phrases. Some animatronics are locked to stages, some are restricted to certain modes, and the idea of a friendly mascot walking casually among guests becomes rarer, fenced in by liability and fear, and the brand's image cracks further. Parents remember the headlines, even when the commercials return. For us, watching this tangled web of events unfold, a quieter question hangs in the air, one that the official reports never address. When William Afton hears about this, wherever he is in the background of the story, does he grieve another failure? Or does he file it away like an engineer collecting test results? Each bite, each malfunction, each blurred line between flesh and metal becomes another data point in his private research, another proof that the boundary between life and death, between human and machine, might be thinner than most people dare to imagine. As we move onward, let the tale wash over you, because the tragedies are not finished yet, and the restless spirits born from these moments are only beginning to stir. Some purple in the hallways, the serial killer behind the smile. Those experiments in metal and memory do not stay in the lab. They bleed outward into the hallways, into the haunted shadows of the games themselves. As we move along this tangled web of a timeline, we start to see William Afton, not just in documents and theories, but as a shape, a color, drifting slowly across a flickering screen. In the retro-styled mini-games scattered through the series, he appears as a simplified figure, a blocky silhouette washed in a flat, unnatural purple. No name is printed under him, no voice calls him out, yet fans, step by step, learn to recognize this purple guy as William Afton, walking calmly where tragedies have taken place. He is the wrong color in a cheerful world, a quiet stain moving through corridors that should belong only to innocent families and staff. We watch him move through pixelated hallways, the walls reduced to simple lines, the floor a repeating pattern, while an 8-bit tune loops with gentle insistence in the background. Children's sprites bounce, security cameras blink, and somewhere on the main floor, the music keeps playing, as if nothing is wrong. But in a side passage, just off-screen from the imagined crowds, the purple figure slips into a back room, or pauses beside an animatronic, and the mood changes without a single word. Sometimes he is shown dismantling the robots themselves, pulling away heads and limbs, while the game's music continues, oddly bright and detached. On the surface, it looks like a maintenance sequence, a technician doing after-hours work, yet we know the history that clings to these shells. These are the suits that hold restless spirits, the very machines that became vessels for the children he lured away. In these quiet hours, he is not just cleaning up, he is returning to the scene of his crimes. Each visit to a hidden room, each tampered endoskeleton, hints at him erasing evidence, experimenting with remnant, and testing whether death can be bent, measured, or delayed. The minigames, with their limited colors and simple shapes, become a dreamlike record of Afton walking through his own legacy of quiet tragedies, turning grief and horror into data. He is both janitor and architect, wiping away traces while secretly deepening the corruption. And all the while, on the surface of his life, he remains a businessman and a father, signing papers, attending meetings, posing beside mascots under the warm glow of the Fazbear logo. By day, he is the reassuring owner in a suit. By night, he is the predator inside a different kind of suit, a spring Bonnie costume used to lure the innocent into the dark. This duality becomes one of the series' most chilling images. The idea that the monster is not an ancient curse or an unknowable demon, but a man who can smile at customers, then walk down a hallway and vanish into a service door. With every successful disappearance, every night where no one connects the purple silhouette to the friendly owner, his confidence grows. He has walked among haunted machines and walked away untouched, and that quiet success emboldens him. If he can move so freely through these shadows, if the law cannot see what the minigames quietly show us, then why should he stop at simple murder? As we continue, we will watch him push further past the limits of flesh into experiments with life, death, and machinery that make even these early hallway scenes feel almost gentle by comparison. Sister location, a laboratory beneath the laughter. So he moves past the hallways, past the back rooms, past the simple act of luring and killing. In the quiet hours after the restaurants close, William Afton begins planning something else entirely, something that will sit beneath the laughter rather than beside it. On the surface, it will look like more of the same. Bright lights, cheerful colors, a new brand of family fun. Circus Baby's entertainment and rental, when you first picture it, feels almost comforting. A carnival palette of reds and greens, a stage framed by balloons and ice cream motifs, music boxes and gentle jingles drifting slowly through the air. Posters promise private parties and special performances, a traveling show that can be rented out, brought directly to you, as if the magic of Freddy's has been distilled into something portable and personal. It is designed to look harmless, even a little dreamy. But that is only the skin. Beneath that painted surface, hidden under the floorboards of joy, there is another world entirely, a buried history running parallel to the restaurants we already know. A freight elevator descends from the stage area into cold, echoing corridors, where concrete replaces confetti and steel replaces streamers. Fluorescent lights hum against bare walls, and long industrial hallways connect control rooms, testing chambers, and storage bays, while up above, children laugh. Down below, machines wait in haunted shadows, powered on but quiet. This facility is not a Fazbear location in the usual sense, not a place with birthday packages and public safety inspections and parents watching from the tables. It is Afton's private playground, built under the Circus Baby's brand but functionally separate from the company's public face. A space where he can work without Henry's oversight, without security cameras meant for customers, without questions. Here, he is not a co-founder trying to keep a business alive. He is an engineer pursuing whatever dark curiosity crosses his mind. The animatronics he builds for this place reflect that shift. The Funtime line, Circus Baby, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and others are not just entertainers with programmed dances and pre-recorded songs. Their designs fold in mechanisms that have nothing to do with performance. Internal storage compartments, articulated claws, faceplates that open like dissected masks, voice mimicking systems, and tracking routines. They are built to capture, to contain, to study the human beings who get too close. Entertainment is the bait. Abduction is the function. In the earlier restaurants, William killed in the margins, taking advantage of blind spots and broken policies, using backrooms as hunting grounds that the building itself never acknowledged. Here, the building is the hunting ground. The fun times mark a shift from opportunistic violence to premeditated, engineered predation, where every hinge and servo is designed with the act of taking a child in mind. The timeline bends here, from a man hiding his crimes among the tables to a man coding those crimes into metal. And in the middle of all this, there is Elizabeth, William's own daughter, drawn to Circus Baby, with the innocent fascination of a child who sees only the bright colors and the gentle voice. He tells her to stay away, to keep her distance, his warnings firm but strangely lingering, like temptations wrapped in caution. Do not go near her, do not get close. We can feel even now that these are not just rules. They are invitations to disobey, threaded through a father's false concern. If the earlier murders were quiet tragedies hidden in party rooms, what happens next will be a tragedy built into the blueprints themselves, one that will fuse his legacy of violence directly to his family. As we follow this tangled web step by step, we will watch Circus Baby do exactly what she was made to do. Elizabeth and Baby, a daughter swallowed by her father's creation, and so we arrive at the moment when the blueprints stop being theoretical, when the danger William has been perfecting reaches back into his own home. Elizabeth Afton grows up in those haunted shadows, an innocent child surrounded by prototypes and party rooms, by test models and half-finished mascots, and she does what children do. She watches, she listens, she wonders. Where her older brother is anxious and withdrawn, Elizabeth is curious and strong-willed, drawn not away from the strange machines her father builds, but toward them, especially toward one figure that seems to command the most secrecy. Circus Baby, tall, pale, elegant, with a painted smile and eyes that never quite look empty. And from the beginning, William marks Baby as forbidden. He tells Elizabeth not to go near her, not to talk to her, not to stand too close when the systems are on. His voice is firm, his rules absolute, yet there is an odd distance in his fear. It feels less like a father protecting a daughter, and more like an engineer afraid the experiment will trigger too soon. We can almost see him in the quiet hours, checking Baby's schematics, reviewing subroutines that mention grabbing, capturing, containing, while his daughter lingers at the doorway, drifting slowly between wanting his attention and wanting the machine that seems to have stolen it. The warnings, as we already know in this tangled web, are invitations. Elizabeth hears no and translates it into special, into important, into mine. She talks to Baby through the glass. She presses her hands against the cold barrier, and somewhere in the code, Baby learns her voice. William continues to repeat himself, but each repetition only sharpens her resolve, and the tragedy that follows begins to feel inevitable, like a script written into the hardware. One day, the pizzeria is quiet, the testing floor still. No crowds, no music, just the hum of idle systems. Elizabeth finds herself alone with Circus Baby. The barriers open, the room unguarded. Baby offers ice cream, as she was designed to do. A gentle lure built to disarm children and bring them closer. An arm extends, smooth and graceful, and then another mechanism unfolds, hidden until now. The segmented claw, the cavity meant to hold, to trap, to steal away. There is no loud scream in this version of the story, only a sudden movement, a closing space, and a child swallowed whole by her father's creation. In that instant, Elizabeth's life ends, but her presence does not. Her soul, like Charlie's before her, binds to the metal, seeping into Circus Baby's systems until the animatronic is no longer just a weapon, but a person. Baby remembers the ice cream, the fear, the way the room went dark. She remembers loving her father and realizing too late what he built her to do. Inside that shell, a new, tragic consciousness wakes, one that loves and resents William in equal measure, a restless spirit trapped in a body designed for luring and killing. When William discovers what has happened, there is grief, yes, but not the clean break we might hope for. Instead of shutting everything down, instead of walking away from this legacy of quiet tragedies, he studies it. Elizabeth's fate becomes proof, in his mind, that the process works, that souls can be captured, preserved, repurposed. Rather than ending his experiments, her death deepens them, turning personal loss into data, and data into motivation. From here, his work with Remnant, with Possession, with the fun timeline will only intensify, as if every tear he does not shed is poured back into the machines. As we move forward along this timeline, we will see how Baby, carrying Elizabeth within her, and William, carrying the knowledge of what he has done, continue to shape the haunted history of Fazbear Entertainment step by step. Michael Afton, the son sent to clean up the blood. And while William carries that knowledge like a hidden weight, we have to look at the child who carries a different burden entirely. A Michael Afton grows up in the haunted shadows of this family, the older son who watched his little brother's fear, who played too roughly, who stood too close to the stage on that terrible day. He is not the genius engineer or the calculating businessman. He is just a young man drifting slowly through the aftermath of a quiet tragedy, trying to live with the memory of a crying child and a closing jaw. In this tangled web of remnant and possession, Michael is not the architect. He is the debris left behind, and William knows exactly how to use that. One day, in the quiet hours after the worst storms have already passed, William gives Michael a task, a simple instruction on the surface. Go to a place beneath the ground. Go to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Go there and find someone. Free someone. The words are gentle. I go almost fatherly, but there is a chill beneath them, as if he is sending Michael not on a rescue mission, but into an experiment. So Michael goes, step by step, down into the elevator that hums and rattles, down into the underground complex that was built when Circus Baby's Pizza World never opened its doors. The bright party space above was abandoned, but below, the fun time line still waits, gleaming and predatory. As we follow him, we can almost hear the distant echoes of children who never arrived, and the restless spirits that did. He moves through sterile control rooms and cramped maintenance tunnels, through Bellora's gallery where music sways in the dark, through Funtime Auditorium where light becomes a weapon instead of a comfort. Each night, another task. Each instruction, delivered by calm voices and distorted guides, pulls him deeper into a maze that feels less like a workplace and more like a test. Slowly, Michael realizes he is not simply navigating an abandoned rental facility. He is trapped in a living puzzle, surrounded by fun-time animatronics designed not just to entertain, but to capture, to dissect, to harvest. These machines carry Remnant in their systems and Elizabeth in their circuits, and all the while, William remains distant, unseen, the quiet author of this trial. To William, Michael is a tool, a pair of hands to reset breakers and reboot systems, a body to measure how far Remnant and agony can stretch a human shell, a test subject, a disposable asset, a son in name only. When the wires finally coil around Michael and Ennard forms its patchwork body from the fun-time parts, we see the culmination of that cold calculation. And Michael dies there, in a way, his body hollowed out and worn like a suit by this combined entity as it walks up to the surface, leaving a trail of invisible horror along the timeline. Yet Remnant does not let him rest. His corpse rises again, purpled and decayed, walking proof that even William's own children are not exempt from becoming experiments. And as Michael staggers on, animated by something that should not be, we are left to wonder what his father is planning next, and who will be the next piece moved across this quiet, deadly board. Remnant and the Science of Souls. Afton's new obsession. What Michael's walking corpse really proves, in the quiet hours after everything we have already seen, is that William has found something. Not just a method of killing, not just a habit of cruelty, but a substance, an energy, that lets the dead refuse the grave. From this point in the timeline, we are no longer only dealing with a murderer in the shadows. We are drifting slowly into the Science of Souls. In the language fans would later give it, we call this substance remnant. In simple terms, remnant is what is left when intense emotion and violent death collide, a strange residue of agony and attachment that clings to metal and circuitry. It is not blood, not rust, not any normal material, but a kind of spiritual heat, capable of binding restless spirits to objects or machines, holding them close when they should have passed on. It is grief, terror, and love, all burned into something that can be melted, moved, and used. William does not arrive at this understanding in a single revelation. Step by step, through quiet tragedies and repeated experiments, when he watches patterns form, he sees Charlie's spirit refuse to leave the puppet, sees the missing children's souls inhabit Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and that haunted golden Freddy. He sees his own son linger in a comatose half-life, and later, his now rotting body continue to move. To a normal father, these would be warnings. To William, the engineer, they are data points in a growing theory. If emotion and death can anchor a soul, he reasons, then perhaps that anchoring can be controlled. If possession happens by accident, then perhaps it can be made to happen on purpose. Remnant becomes, in his mind, the key to conquering death itself, a quiet, terrible promise of immortality. Not the peaceful kind we dream of, but a mechanical, enforced persistence where identity is soldered to steel. This is where his killings change. They are no longer only acts of opportunity or twisted impulse. They become procedures. In backrooms and underground chambers, he creates controlled settings for fear, for loss, for the moment when a life ends and remnant is produced. Children are lured not just because they are innocent and trusting, but because their raw emotion is, to him, a more potent fuel. Human lives, in William's cold calculations, are reduced to ingredients. We see the evidence of this shift in his increasingly elaborate animatronics and hidden facilities. Circus Baby's Pizza World is not merely a new restaurant. It is a laboratory disguised as a party. The Funtime animatronics are built with scooping mechanisms, storage tanks, and injection systems, all designed to generate, contain, and manipulate this soul-infused material. Deep below the surface, our metal is melted down, remnant is harvested from haunted endoskeletons, and then injected back into new shells, creating machines that do not simply move, but hunger. In this tangled web of experiments, grief itself becomes a laboratory resource. The deaths of his own children, the mourning families above ground, the restless spirits trapped in metal shells, all feed into William's quiet obsession. He is no longer just hiding bodies. He is curating suffering, adjusting variables, waiting to see which animatronic twitches first in the haunted shadows. And as we follow this history onward, we will see how this discovery refuses to stay buried with him, how Remnant's legacy seeps into later projects, other facilities, and eventually into code itself, turning one man's private nightmare into a much wider digital haunt. The final chase. Afton cornered in the safe room, Remnant's legacy seeps outward, but before it spreads into circuits and code, we stay with the man who first distilled it, following him into the quiet hours of his final hunt. The empire has crumbled. The crowds are gone. What remains is a building left behind by the franchise he helped create, drifting slowly toward demolition. The pizzeria around him is decaying, a hollow echo of its glory days, where bright colors have faded to a sickly palette beneath flickering bulbs. Posters peel from the walls, their cheerful mascots warped and curling at the edges, as if even the paper remembers the quiet tragedies that played out here. In party rooms and along the main stage, animatronics stand frozen in mid-performance, jaws half open, eyes dark, their servos long since stilled, as like actors abandoned between scenes. As William moves through these haunted shadows, he is no longer the confident engineer or the calculating businessman. He is a hunted thing, listening for footsteps that do not quite sound like footsteps. The spirits of the murdered children, now fully aware and vengeful, do not rush him directly. Instead, they appear at the ends of corridors, in doorways, in the dead glass of arcade machines, their presence bending the air, herding him step by step, away from exits that should have offered freedom. A hall that once led to the loading bay feels longer than it should. A side door refuses to open, its lock rusted, or perhaps guided by restless spirits who will not let him slip away again. We can imagine him trying one route, then another, only to find himself driven deeper into the building's forgotten veins, toward the back rooms that never appeared on the glossy brochures. He knows these layouts better than anyone. He helped design so many of them. Yet tonight, the maze feels like it belongs to someone else, as if the timeline itself is closing around him. Finally, cornered by forces he cannot see but can feel pressing in, William ducks through a narrow, unmarked doorway. Inside, the noise of the building falls away. This is a hidden safe room, built deliberately off the grid, removed from security cameras and official blueprints, a place where he once believed he could operate without witnesses. Dust lies thick on the floor. Old tools and spare parts rest where they were dropped years ago, and on the wall, hanging like a memory that refused to rot, and is an old Spring Bonnie suit. The metal frame within is familiar, its springlock mechanisms designed to fold back, to make room for an employee to climb inside. He had always treated the danger as manageable risk, a technical problem for careful hands and clear instructions, something that could be controlled. Now, with the children's presence gathering outside the walls, he makes a measured choice. He will hide in the thing he created. We watch in this quiet suspended moment of history as he steps toward the suit, as he pulls it from its hook and begins to climb inside, trusting cold steel more than the haunted air beyond the door. Somewhere above, a pipe releases a slow, steady drip of water, pattering onto the floor, onto old mechanisms that were never meant to grow this old. The hinges creak. Metal shifts. There is a damp, uneasy silence. And then, from within the suit, we hear it. A faint, ominous series of clicks, Springlocks adjusting under new strain, flirting with failure, holding for just a breath longer than they should, before the moment breaks. Springtrap is born, a body trapped in its own invention. The moment breaks, and it does not break loudly at first. It begins as a shudder, a tiny surrender of metal deep inside the Spring Bonnie suit, as if the old mechanisms are exhaling after holding their breath for too many quiet hours. Then the springs slip, the locks release, and gravity does what it always does. We hear the change before we fully understand it. A wet crunch beneath the sharp, brutal slam of steel components snapping inward, and bars and plates that were meant to stay politely recessed, now driving straight into soft tissue and fragile bone. William's body is pinned in an instant, ribs folding, spine twisting, his own engineering turning against him with a cold, automatic precision. There is no graceful struggle here, only the ugly collision of bones and machinery, a man being crushed inside the smiling shell he once used to lure innocent children away from the light. In this dim, forgotten room, we can feel the quiet tragedies of the entire timeline gathering around him. The engineer, who once prided himself on control, finds there is nothing to negotiate with, no one to deceive, only gears and springs and the merciless weight of his own design. It is a poetic irony that settles over the scene like dust. The predator trapped in the very kind of body he created for the hunt. The hunter locked inside his favorite mask. Step by step, the suit becomes less a costume and more a coffin. Blood seeps into fabric, into joints, into the tiny corners of the endoskeleton that were never meant to host anything living. Days drift by, then years, drifting slowly into decades, and in that stagnant air, flesh decays while metal rusts, until the difference between corpse and machine is blurred beyond recognition. The greenish rot stains the yellow suit, wires spill like veins, and what remains is given a new name in the haunted shadows of Fazbear history: Springtrap. He is no longer simply William Afton, and not merely an animatronic. He is a fused entity, a stubborn knot of rusted parts and restless malice that refuses to release its grip on existence. The children's spirits, who once chased him into this room, do not free him. They have seen enough. They leave him where he has fallen, sealed in the safe room's darkness, condemned to a long, silent existence with only his thoughts and the slow ticking of distant mechanisms for company. It would be comforting to say this is the end of his legacy, that the tangled web of his crimes finally closes here, in a forgotten back room with a deserved death. But the story does not yield so easily. Fires will come, and buildings will fall. Flames will lick at molded walls, and new locations will rise from old foundations. Somewhere within those haunted structures, Springtrap waits, and William Afton's story, carried forward by remnant memory, iron code, is far from finished. Let the tale wash over you as we move toward the next awakening. 30 years of silence, the long sleep of Springtrap. So we pause here, in the aftermath of metal teeth and failing springs, and we let the timeline grow quiet for a while. The chase has ended, the screams have faded, and somewhere behind sealed doors, something that was once William Afton lies still in the dark. Years begin to pass, first in weeks, then in seasons, then in long, indistinct stretches that blur together like a forgotten dream, drifting slowly beyond anyone's daily concerns. Dust settles over the abandoned building, soft and patient, coating tables, counters, and cracked prize shelves in a pale, undisturbed film. The bright party posters on the walls fade from cheerful colour to muted ghosts of ink, uncurling at the corners, their cartoon mascots smiling into empty air. Outside, the world changes step by step, even if the walls do not. Cars grow sleeker, their distant hum different from the engines that once rumbled past. Music on passing radios shifts, muffled through boarded windows, from cassette-era pop to digital beats, then to songs streamed from devices no one at the old pizzeria ever imagined. Children walk by on their way to newer attractions, holding glowing screens instead of paper tickets, barely glancing at the sagging structure that used to promise birthday magic. Inside, however, the safe room remains almost perfectly still. No breeze reaches here. No sunlight cuts through the boarded gaps. It is a pocket of frozen history, a forgotten node in this tangled web of quiet tragedies and haunted shadows. In that cramped, the hidden chamber, Springtrap slumps where he fell, a twisted silhouette of greenish fabric, rusted metal, and withered flesh locked together in a grotesque embrace. There is no movement, not in the way we usually think of it. Yet somewhere between the rotting remnants of a human brain and the remnant-soaked endoskeleton, there is a faint, stubborn awareness, a consciousness that does not fully sleep and cannot fully wake. Thoughts flicker like failing bulbs. Anger, fear, a looping confusion that never quite forms words. The restless spirits bound to this place have gone on, but this one presence remains, pinned inside its own ruined body, listening to nothing, feeling only time press down. As the decades slide by, Fazbear Entertainment's legacy changes shape in the public mind. The lawsuits and headlines yellow and crumble, and the hard facts sink beneath layers of rumour. Stories pass between schoolyards and online forums about missing children, about mechanical mascots that moved when they shouldn't, about a man in a rabbit suit. Urban legends bloom where records used to be, and the company becomes a cautionary tale, a spooky anecdote told on late nights. All the while, the true monster sleeps just a few walls away from a world that has mostly forgotten him. We, as listeners, can rest here as well, in these long quiet hours, letting the tale wash over you without rushing forward, feeling the strange calm of a story paused but not concluded. Nothing is happening, and yet everything is waiting. Then, slowly, attention begins to turn back. A new generation, raised on those rumours and fascinated by the haunted history of this place, starts to plan something different. A horror attraction, built from the ruins and relics of Fazbear's past. They want to walk guests through the nightmares. They do not yet know that in the dark behind one sealed door, the nightmare is already waiting to be disturbed. Fazbear's Fright, turning tragedy into entertainment. So from the crumbling shells of old restaurants and the dust of forgotten lawsuits, a new idea rises. If the tragedies of Freddy Fazbear's are going to live on as rumours, why not turn those rumours into a show? Fazbear's Fright is born as a haunted attraction, a place where curious guests can wander through dim corridors and stage scares, paying to brush up against a history they only half believe, laughing nervously at the thought that any of it might have been real, and the people who build it are scavengers of a quiet, haunted history. They move through shuttered locations with flashlights and crowbars, gently prying loose arcade cabinets, faded party posters, and cracked animatronic heads, treating each object as a prop rather than a relic of quiet tragedies. On the surface, it is just set dressing for a horror maze, but we know, and you know, that every piece carries echoes of restless spirits and long-buried nights that never truly ended. During one of these expeditions, they stumble on something different. Behind old blueprints and misfiled work orders, they find references to sealed-off spaces, rooms that do not appear on public maps, tucked away in the tangled web of service corridors. A hidden safe room. When they finally force the door open, the air is stale, the light weak, and in the center of the room stands a single, motionless figure. A green, decayed spring bonnie suit, slumped and rotting, its metal frame warped by time and rust. To them, it is perfect. Just another costume, they think, something authentic to anchor their attraction. Too ruined to be dangerous, too still to be anything but dead material. They haul Springtrap back to Fazbear's Fright and set him up as a centerpiece, unaware that they are wheeling William Afton himself back into the light, that the corpse sealed within the suit has never truly been allowed to rest. As the attraction takes shape and the power comes on, something in that room changes. The buzz of electricity, the hum of monitors, the presence of a new night guard sitting alone in the quiet hours, all of it stirs what remains of William's will. Drawn by new life, a new fear, and perhaps by the lingering spirits bound to the relics around him, Springtrap begins to move again, drifting slowly through the shadows, following the faint, familiar scent of terror. Your experience in 5 Nights at Freddy's 3 places you directly in that chair. We watch cameras, flip through grainy feeds, and seal vents as footsteps echo faintly through the building, always a room or two away. Every distorted audio lure, every flicker of static, becomes part of a looping ritual, as if we are trapped step by step in a recurring dream with William's undead form, keeping him at bay, but never truly escaping the circle he has drawn around himself. Eventually, fire comes again. Fazbear's Fright burns, its plywood walls and stolen props collapsing into a bright, consuming blaze. And once more, flames close over William Afton's twisted body, charring suit and bone together in a final, terrible embrace. But as the smoke drifts upward and the attraction becomes ash, we are left with a quiet question. If his influence has already seeped into stories, into technology, into the minds of those who keep rebuilding his legacy, can any fire really be the end? Or is something darker already waiting to emerge from the haunted shadows of the code itself? Pizzeria Simulator, Henry's last invitation. And yet, even as that question hangs in the smoke, drifting slowly above ruined attractions and failed finales, the timeline carries us forward to one last carefully prepared stage. On the surface, it looks harmless. A cheerful, low-budget pizzeria management sim, where we test animatronics, place arcade machines, and balance books under the warm hum of fluorescent lights. But beneath that gentle facade, Henry Emily has built something else entirely. What seems like a business venture is, in truth, a cage, a lure, a quiet trap designed with painful precision. Step by step, as we accept questionable salvage items from the alley and bring them inside for extra profit, we are doing exactly what Henry needs us to do. gathering the scattered remnants of a long, haunted history into one place, so that they can finally burn together. One by one, the figures arrive, drawn by memory, by agony, by the echo of familiar rooms. There is Springtrap, the further rotted shell of Springtrap. William Afton's body fused deeper into the decayed Spring Bonnie frame, movements twitchy and desperate, like a predator that has forgotten how to hunt, but not how to hate. There is molten Freddy, a tangle of wires and faces, the fragmented remains of Funtime Freddy and the others, their restless spirits woven into a single, whispering mass. Scrap Baby joins them, Elizabeth's corrupted form in a new, jagged body, her clawed scooper arm gleaming in the dim light of the back room, her voice sweet and venomous as she tests our defenses each night. Other remnants lurk in the vents and in the dark, echoes of the fun times, of the puppet's long vigil, of quiet tragedies that have been chasing closure since the earliest days of Fredbear's. All of them, all these haunted shadows, find their way to this unassuming restaurant that was never really meant to succeed. When the final night ends and the conditions are met, the walls of pretense fall away, and Henry's true plan reveals itself in a recorded speech that plays over crackling speakers as the sprinklers fail and the flames rise. His voice is calm, almost gentle, as he addresses the children first, acknowledging their suffering, their innocence, and the long years they have spent bound to metal and wire. He speaks to them with compassion, promising that this time the fire is not meant to hurt them, but to free them. Then he turns, verbally, toward William. There is no shouting, only a quiet condemnation, a simple statement that Afton's legacy of pain ends here, in this sealed building, with no doors left to run through. We can almost see the fire climbing the walls, reflecting in the cracked eye of Springtrap, wrapping around suit and bone, around molten Freddy's cables and Scrap Baby's cold smile. As Henry lets the building become a funeral pyre for an entire era of Fazbear's history. The flames roar, and for a moment it feels final, like a line drawn in burning ink across the tangled web of everything that came before. Yet even as we let the tale wash over us in these quiet hours, a doubt remains at the edge of the dream. Bodies can burn, metal can melt, but data, ideas, and imitations can slip through different kinds of cracks, waiting patiently in code and circuits for the next chapter to begin. From flesh to file, the glitch trap emerges. So when the last fire dies down and the smoke clears, we might be tempted to think the story has finally gone quiet, that the restless spirits have been given their due and the monster who made them has met his end at last. But this timeline does not stop just because a body does. It bends, it reroutes, it slips, drifting slowly from haunted hallways into haunted hardware. In the years that follow, a new Fazbear entertainment emerges, polished and corporate, speaking in careful press releases about legacy and brand rehabilitation. They commission a virtual reality experience, a glossy in-universe project we come to know as Five Nights at Freddy's. Help Wanted, designed to retell the old tragedies as harmless games, to turn lawsuits and disappearances into quirky mini-challenges. Officially, it is a way to control the narrative, to rewrite history as entertainment, to make the past feel like a bad dream you can simply take off with a headset. Behind the scenes, a quiet team of contracted developers is given a strange assignment, and they are told to salvage anything usable from the company's archives. Old circuit boards, corrupted hard drives, half-erased security logs, fragments of code from long-defunct locations. To them, it is just data, a pile of obsolete assets to be cleaned and repurposed, while executives talk about synergy and nostalgia. Yet as they stitch these relics together, line by line and file by file, something older begins to pulse beneath the new veneer, a pattern of behavior threading through the tangled web of recovered software. Inside the finished game, that pattern starts to show itself, not as a glitchy line of text, but as a presence. At first, it is only glimpsed at the edges, a yellow rabbit figure flickering in test rooms and prize corners, standing too still, then moving too smoothly. He waves slowly, with a gentle, almost friendly rhythm, then breaks into a little dance that feels wrong in a way you cannot quite name. Too human and too mocking for a simple mascot. His empty eyes track you in the virtual dark, and every gesture whispers that this is not an ordinary bug. We call this apparition Glitchtrap, but the name is just a mask on top of another mask. Whether he is William Afton's full consciousness painstakingly embedded in code, a residual echo clinging to digitized remnants, or a virus shaped by his will and his history, the effect is the same. The man who once walked physical corridors in a spring bonnie suit now moves through menus and memory addresses, slipping through silicon instead of vent shafts, turning the headset itself into a doorway. And in this new realm, he is no longer limited by rust or bone. Here, he can spread as easily as a patch, replicate as easily as a download, riding every copy of Help Wanted into new homes, new minds, new innocent players sitting alone in the quiet hours. Step by step, the monster who refused to die learns that he can reach anyone who presses start. And the question that lingers in the haunted shadows is simple. If he can escape one game, how many more places can he learn to live? We have left the burning pizzerias behind, but as we move forward, we will see that the danger has only changed its shape. Possessing the player. Glitchtrap's quiet recruitment. So we leave the ashes of old restaurants behind and drift instead into a glowing headset where the danger does not creak on metal hinges but hums quietly in code. Help Wanted presents itself as a harmless compilation, at a digital museum of the company's mistakes. Yet, as we move through its menus and minigames, we begin drifting slowly towards something watching from just beyond the frame. At first, Glitchtrap is almost nothing. A flicker of green and purple at the very edge of a level select screen. A mascot-shaped artifact that appears in the corner of a darkened hallway or backstage area, and then vanishes when we try to stare. We catch him in the background of a prize room, or behind glass in a hidden space that only reveals itself when we lean in and break the intended boundaries, as if the game is rewarding curiosity while quietly feeding it. Each time we uncover a secret tape or push a little further into the corrupted nooks of this virtual pizzeria, he is there again, closer, clearer, more confident. He does not speak, but he performs. In one scene, we find him in a strange, empty room, standing under a spotlight, clapping slowly as if to welcome us. In another, he sways and bounces in an awkward, cheerful dance, mimicking the simple gestures of a stage performer. Yet there is something wrong in the timing, something hungry in the way his head tilts toward the camera. Step by step, his movements become more directed, less like random idle animation and more like a ritual, inviting us to mirror him, to raise our hands, to press the buttons he seems to point toward. Soon the game itself begins to feel like a ceremony. Menus stutter, textures tear open into static, and save files behave as though something else is sharing them. Collect enough tapes, follow enough glitches, and you are drawn into a final, unsettling sequence where Glitchtrap stands before you, arms open, as a wall of writhing code closes in. He beckons, he bows, he gestures as if asking you to choose him, to put on the digital equivalent of a costume that will never come off. This is William Afton's old pattern, rewritten in a new language. Once, he lured children down quiet hallways with friendly masks and party rooms. Now he lures players through achievement lists and secret rooms, isolating them not in storage closets, but in private instances of a game, where no one can see what they are agreeing to. The back room has become a glitchy minigame. The locked door has become an overridden save. The same restless spirits that once clung to metal now flicker at the edges of corrupted files, part of a larger, tangled web of influence. By the end of Help Wanted, the implication is that Glitchtrap succeeds. The golden rabbit dissolves into a shower of symbols that seem to settle over the player's perspective. And in the broader timeline, many of us connect this moment to Vanessa, the quiet QA tester, who will later appear in Security Breach. In that reading, Afton rides the signal out of the game and into a living mind, stepping from haunted shadows of code back into the physical world. The quiet tragedies of burned restaurants and sealed rooms are no longer enough, because fire cannot touch a process running on distant servers. As we move forward, we will see that William Afton's legacy has learned to live where flames cannot reach, and the dream of ending him with a single blaze has already slipped away. Vanessa and Vany, a new mask for an old monster. And so, as the fires fade and the servers keep humming, we arrive in a brighter building that somehow feels even more haunted. The old restaurants have burned, the Springlocks suits have rusted away, yet the legacy of William Afton continues, drifting slowly into new lives, new minds, new quiet tragedies that do not look like ghosts at first glance. In this new era, we meet Vanessa. On paper, she is simple enough. A security guard at the gleaming Mega Pizzaplex, a uniformed presence meant to keep guests safe, to walk the quiet hours and watch the cameras while children sleep and neon lights dim overhead. But as we follow the timeline of Security Breach, small fractures begin to show in the way she speaks, in the strange hesitations, in the sense that someone else might be looking out through her eyes. Because Vanessa is not alone in herself. In the haunted shadows of this modern complex, another figure moves. Vany, the white rabbit costume follower of Glitchtrap, darting through maintenance corridors and party rooms, following violent instructions that echo William's old patterns with unsettling precision. Where Afton once wore spring bonnet to lure the innocent into back rooms, Vany now wears a smiling rabbit mask, turning a playful mascot into a hunting disguise, a gentle silhouette that hides a predatory script. Here, the contrast tightens. Vanessa, the anxious guard trying to maintain order, and Vany, the relentless pursuer, exist like two channels on the same frequency, switching back and forth while the night stretches on. We see security logs that do not match her memories. We hear hints of therapy sessions. We feel that someone has been quietly editing her line by line, until the distinction between choice and compulsion is blurred almost beyond recognition. Glitchtrap, the digital ghost of William Afton, seems to be the author of this split. Through VR headsets, corrupted game builds, and lingering code from the Fazbear virtual projects, he reaches out to Vanessa, grooming, coercing, perhaps even overwriting parts of her mind. Step by step, he turns her into a modern-day proxy, a living vessel running his old behaviors, like an operating system forced to execute malicious commands it never asked for. The thematic repetition is chilling. Once again, a mascot suit becomes a mask for horror, but now the monster behind the mask is also a victim, a young woman ensnared in a tangled web of manipulation and control. It is no longer just a man choosing evil. It is a corrupted program teaching someone else how to move, how to stalk, how to kill. In this, we see how William's evil has changed shape. It is less about one broken body and more about a contagious idea. A script that can be installed on new human hardware, spreading through code, through suggestion, through dreams. As we continue along this history, let the tale wash over you, because the next phase of the story will show that Vanessa and Vany are only the beginning of this restless digital inheritance. The Mega Pizzaplex, a cathedral to a cursed brand. That restless digital inheritance needs a stage, and Fazbear Entertainment builds one that feels less like a restaurant and more like a cathedral to its own image. By the time we arrive at the Mega Pizzaplex, we are drifting slowly into a space that seems determined to overwhelm the senses, as if sheer spectacle could drown out decades of quiet tragedies. Neon washes every surface in soft purples and electric blues. Towering standees of glam rock Freddy and his band rise like modern stained glass, their eyes lit, their smiles wide, their poses frozen mid-performance. The main atrium stretches upward in shining tiers, with escalators crossing like ribbons of light, leading to arcades, food courts, bowling alleys, a full racetrack, and a concert stage that can shake the glass with music. It is not just a pizzeria anymore. It is a dream of endless nights, of innocent families wandering through a carnival under one roof. Step by step, Fazbear has tried to outgrow its own history, and the Pizzaplex is that ambition made concrete and chrome. After bankruptcies, fires, lawsuits, and rumors, the company leans into new branding, new animatronic designs, new safety slogans, and layers of augmented reality, as though a fresh coat of holograms could erase the stains beneath. The glam rocks are marketed as friendly celebrities, the staff bots as tireless helpers, the security systems as reassuring guardians, all while the official storylines quietly omit missing children, murders, and haunted shadows. But buildings remember things, even when corporations pretend not to. Beneath the polished terrazzo floors and looping pop songs, there are sealed doors marked for staff only, service corridors that never appear on guest maps, and old concrete foundations that do not quite match the blueprints. The Pizzaplex is built over earlier attempts, over older projects and abandoned shells, its bright atriums resting on a buried, tangled web of failures. When Gregory finds himself trapped here after closing, his exploration becomes more than a child hiding from security. As we follow him through the quiet hours, we move from the glowing center outward, from the bustling show floors into service tunnels, forgotten party rooms, and construction zones left half-finished. Each elevator ride down, each hidden vent, feels like peeling back another layer of corporate denial, revealing that the cheerful surface has always depended on something darker underneath. Way below the racetrack, below the daycare, below even the maintenance levels, the architecture changes. Metal gives way to older brick, clean lines to crumbling concrete, as though we are sliding backward through the timeline of Fazbear's legacy. There are traces of previous attractions, hints of sister locations, hints of projects that were meant to be erased. And in those depths, the restless spirits of Afton's work have not been fully laid to rest. We are not yet shown the full shape, only the suggestion of an amalgamation waiting in the dark, a body of twisted endoskeletons and remnant, a place where his influence has pooled instead of disappearing. Even here, at the height of the brand, the story is quietly steering us toward that presence, reminding us that no matter how tall the Pizzaplex rises, William Afton still waits somewhere far below. Springtrap, the last body in the dark. So we follow that pull downward, drifting slowly past neon and polished glass, past the bright distractions of the Pizzaplex, until the building's cheerful skin gives way to concrete, dust, and then the quiet smell of old smoke. Step by step, the escalators and the service ladders turn into rough maintenance shafts, then into broken stairwells, and finally into the forgotten ribs of an older restaurant, half buried beneath this new monument to Fazbear's history. Down here, the air feels heavier, as if the past has settled in layers on every surface. Charred walls bloom with blackened patterns where flames once licked and retreated. Collapsed rooms open into jagged gaps, giving us brief, unsettling glimpses into party areas that will never host another innocent birthday. We recognize the layout in pieces, like a half-remembered dream. Prize corners, show stages, security doors, all warped by heat and time, all holding the quiet tragedies of earlier fires that were supposed to be endings. In this maze of haunted shadows, the legacy of those failures waits for us in a single, ruined chamber. Here, the machinery is thicker, more tangled, as if the building itself has been trying to grow around something it could not digest. Cables hang like vines. Endoskeleton parts are welded into the walls, and in the center, slumped yet unmistakably present, is the neck shape of William Afton's persistence. We call him Springtrap, but he is still Springtrap underneath, just further cooked, further broken, further fused to the metal he once used as a hunting ground. His suit is charred to a deep, permanent black, with patches of green and purple clinging like bruises that never healed. Exposed endoskeleton gleams dully through cracked plating, and what remains of his human form is threaded through the frame like a warning the timeline refused to heed. Yet he moves. Slowly, unmechanically, with that same stubborn malice, joints grinding, fingers twitching, head tracking our presence, as if the years and the fires have been nothing more than brief interruptions. Here, his control is not limited to his own ruined body. The systems of the buried pizzeria and the Pizzaplex above are his new Springlocks, and he snaps them closed around us with the same cruel precision. Doors seal at his command, ventilation shafts become traps, corrupted routines turn friendly machines hostile. He reaches through circuit boards and ancient wiring, trying once again to cage, to corner, to convert another child into fuel for his restless spirits and twisted research. As we watch this confrontation unfold, it feels less like a boss fight and more like a ritual we have seen many times before. The first back room where he donned Spring Bonnie, the safe room where the Springlocks finally bit down, the blaze of Pizzeria Simulator, the burning hallways of earlier locations, each fire declared as the final one, each collapse framed as his last chapter. The tangled web of his history keeps looping back to the same image. William Afton, trapped in a body of his own making, surrounded by flames that never quite finish their work. Once more, the answer is fire. Systems overload, sparks shower across oil-stained floors, and the old pizzeria beneath the Pizzaplex begins to groan and buckle. Walls give way, ceiling tiles crash down, and orange light blooms hungrily around Springtrap's struggling form, swallowing machinery, memories, and the remnants of every failed ending layered beneath this place. It is another blaze, another collapse, and another moment where we are invited to believe that the flames have finally reached the core of William Afton. Yet as the smoke thickens and the structure falls in on itself, the question lingers in the quiet hours after. When a man has become a story, a program, an idea, how can we ever be certain that this was truly the last body in the dark? Echoes in code and memory, the legacy of William Afton. So we step back for a moment, drifting slowly away from the fire and the falling ceiling, and we look at the whole shape of him. William Afton, who began as a clever engineer with a toolbox and a partner, building cheerful mascots for Fredbear's family diner, moves across this timeline like a spreading stain, from co-founder to saboteur, from quiet technician to the name whispered in haunted shadows behind every Fazbear location. We have watched him as a father first. The man whose own children, the crying child and Elizabeth, were swallowed by the very creations that were meant to secure his legacy, their tragedies folding into the larger pattern of quiet tragedies that follow him from room to room. We have watched him as a killer, slipping into the spring bonnie suite to lure innocent children into back rooms, then as the technician of death, dismantling animatronics and melting remnant to bind restless spirits into the fun times deep underground. And then, step by step, we have watched him stop being entirely human, trapped and crushed inside that corroded spring bonnie shell. He becomes Springtrap, a rotting fusion of flesh, metal, and stubborn will, surviving in the walls of a horror attraction. Burned there, he staggers on into the next era as Glitchtrap, on a digital echo in Fazbear's VR training programs, a smiling rabbit in the code that guides employees while quietly rewriting them. Burned again, he returns as Burntrap beneath the ruined Pizzaplex, a blackened husk still reaching for control, still refusing to be quiet. Somewhere along that path, he becomes a monster. But when? Was it the first time he chose to test a dangerous Springlock design on a living stage, knowing failure meant a crushed performer? Was it the first child he lured away from the party, or the first time he saw a haunted animatronic move on its own and decided not to stop, but to learn, to refine, to escalate? Or was the true point of no return the moment he understood the cost in suffering and continued anyway, choosing curiosity and power over every pleading voice in the dark? His legacy seeps into every era of Fazbear entertainment. Even when his name is buried, new safety protocols and warning posters, urban legends about back rooms and missing kids, haunted attractions built around old suits, corporate VR simulations designed to train guards against past failures, all of them carry his outline. Even when the company rebrands, reboots, and rewrites its history, Afton's pattern remains, like a watermark beneath the ink. In that way, he is more than a man. He is a fusion of curiosity, cruelty, and a deep fear of death. A mind that could not accept limits and dragged others into that refusal, pulling children, co-workers, even his own family into a dream of survival that was really just a long, slow fall. And here is the quiet thought we are left with, or a pattern interrupt in the middle of this long nightmare. As long as we rebuild these animatronics, as long as we design new simulations and reprogram old stories, as long as we remember and retell this tangled web of history, some version of William Afton will always be moving just out of sight, a presence in the background of every new incident we are about to explore. A timeline to sleep to, drifting back through the years. So now, in the quiet hours of this long timeline, we can gently walk backward, drifting slowly through everything we have seen, letting the sharp edges soften until it all feels like a single, unbroken dream. We began in the 1970s, in that modest diner with yellow walls and cheerful songs, where Henry Emily and William Afton first set their shared ideas into motion, our Springlock suits creaking on stage while parents laughed and children clapped, unaware of the fragile danger hidden in the metal. From there, we watched Fazbear expand step by step, from one small restaurant into a growing chain, each new location promising safety and fun, each new animatronic promising progress, while in the shadows a different pattern formed. The missing children incidents began, quiet tragedies behind party rooms and storage doors, William in his spring Bonnie guise luring the innocent away, the timeline darkening as restless spirits found new homes inside fur and steel. We passed the bites, 83 and 87, two brutal moments that marked the company's public history even as deeper wounds were forming beneath. The crying child's accident at Fredbear's stage, the later attack that shattered another life, became signposts in a haunted history, while the first true hauntings took root. Charlie's spirit bound to the puppet, the murdered children settling into Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and the Golden Suit, turning the mascots into witnesses and wardens. Then we descended underground to sister location, to the secret facility where William's curiosity had hardened into obsession. Circus Baby's Pizza World never opened as planned, but its creations lived on below, designed with hidden compartments and capture mechanisms, built to harvest more than tickets or smiles. Elizabeth's death inside Circus Baby became another pivot point, a daughter folded into a machine, while Michael, worn and guilty, took on his father's burden, sent down into that complex to put her back together, and unknowingly to free something worse. A remnant emerged as William's guiding idea, the molten proof that agony could be turned into a substance, injected, weaponized, used to deny death. That belief carried him into the old safe room, into the Spring Bonnie suit one last time, where the failing Springlocks crushed him and birthed Springtrap, a rotting fusion of man and machine. Decades of silence followed, long stretches where only rumors and abandoned buildings remained, until Fazbear's Fright reopened the story, and Henry's final fire seemed to end William's physical form at last. But the tangled web did not stop burning there. In the digital age, we watched him return as Glitchtrap, Code wearing a rabbit's grin, slipping through Fazbear's VR projects, whispering to Vanessa and bending her will. That influence carried us beneath the Mega Pizzaplex, up into hidden labs and ruined foundations, where old experiments and new victims overlapped, and where, again, someone tried to put a stop to his legacy. As you rest, you can let the tale wash over you, allowing the details to blur into one long corridor of events, doors on either side marked by diners, basements, arcades, and neon malls, with William Afton's footsteps echoing faintly from one end to the other. We are only pausing here, not ending, because even in dreams the story keeps unfolding, and there are still other perspectives, other survivors, waiting in the haunted shadows just ahead. Thank you for walking the corridor. Gentle farewell and reflection. So, for a moment, we linger here in this corridor we have been walking together, in these quiet hours where history, horror, and dream have been drifting slowly into one another until they almost feel the same. You have followed William Afton from a man with a toolbox and a partner to a presence echoing through fire, remnant, and code, and whether you were awake for every step, or let the tale wash over you while you slipped in and out of sleep, you have stayed with the story. Thank you for that. This has been a long, tangled web of diners and basements, of arcades and underground bunkers, of bright mascots hiding haunted shadows just behind the painted smiles, and it asks a lot of anyone to remain here listening. Some of you traced every date and every location, holding the timeline carefully in your mind. Others let the names blur, simply resting in the rhythm of one tragedy following another, step by step, like doors passing by on a slow-moving train. Both ways of listening are welcome here. There is a reason stories like this draw us back again and again, even when we know how they end. There is the puzzle, of course, the satisfaction of fitting William's early engineering brilliance at Fredbear's beside the missing children, the bite of 83, the crushed Spring Bonnie suit, the later fires and VR headsets, until we can see one continuous line. But there is also the strange comfort of completion, of watching a life unfold from its first hopeful experiments to its final restless echoes, and knowing that within the boundaries of this fiction, the arc is whole. William Afton is not real. He is ink and pixels and voice lines, a constructed villain walking through a constructed history, yet the themes that cling to him feel uncomfortably human and close. The obsession that pushes him to keep building, even as bodies fall around his creations. The denial that lets him hide from the cost of his choices. The ambition that twists something clever and innocent into a mechanism for quiet tragedies. We recognize those shapes, even if we never step as far into the dark as he does. As we reach this pause in the corridor, you do not need to carry the weight of his legacy with you. Let the darker images stay here, in this room of words and whispers, like a book gently closed and returned to its shelf, its haunted spirits settling back between the pages. When you step away, take only the calm with you, the soft continuity of the timeline, the knowledge that, for tonight at least, the story is contained. In a moment, how we will turn from Afton himself to the wider echoes he leaves behind, and there will be a very soft invitation, nothing urgent, just a quiet suggestion as we drift onward. For now, simply rest where you are, breathing slowly, knowing that the corridor is still here whenever you wish to walk it again. If you'd like to stay, soft call to action and next steps. And now, as we drift away from William himself and into the quieter edges of his legacy, we find ourselves in that familiar place at the end of a long, haunted history, where the lights are dim, the corridors are empty, and only the echo of the timeline remains. If you're still with us in these quiet hours, eyes heavy, thoughts drifting slowly between waking and dream, you are welcome to stay a little longer, though there is nothing you need to do. If it feels natural, and if it feels gentle rather than urgent, you can leave a like on this video, or subscribe so that the next time you want to let the tale wash over you, this story will be waiting at the edge of your recommended feed, like a pizzeria sign glowing at the end of a dark street. You might even save this to a sleep playlist, a small corner of your own device where restless spirits of different stories can settle down in order, so that on another night, when the day has been loud and crowded, you can press play and step by step return to these familiar haunted shadows, knowing exactly how the tragedy begins and how it will end. If you slipped away somewhere along the tangled web of events, you can, if you wish, leave a quiet comment about where you remember last being awake. Perhaps it was with the innocent children at Fredbear's family diner, and before the first quiet tragedies began. Perhaps it was in the underground bunker with the fun-time animatronics, or in the burning pizzeria where Afton's legacy tried and failed to finally die. Over time, the comments section can become a soft, communal map of resting places along this timeline, a record of where each of us let our eyes close and let the story keep walking without us. For those who find comfort in this format, in one long, unbroken history, told softly from beginning to end, know that this is only one corridor in a larger building. There are, or soon will be, entire timelines devoted to other figures and eras in this universe. To Henry Emily and his quiet attempts at redemption, to the mimic and its cold, learning cruelty, and to the later children who inherit the remnants of this legacy and try to make sense of the ruins left behind. But for tonight, there is nowhere you have to go. You can let the screen dim and then go dark. Let your eyes close and allow the last images of William Afton's story to fade into ordinary dreams. The full timeline will still be here, patient and unchanged, whenever you want to return to it, whether for sleep, study, or simply to walk once more through these shadows. So we will leave you here, in the quiet, with the hum of distant machines and the feeling of a door slowly swinging shut. Rest well, let the pizzeria empty around you, and listen as the sound fades, because somewhere beyond this night, another story is already waking up in the dark.